Why is Lagrange in C tier? Is it because he's French? Well, Shaven and Franzlin are both German. I don't know. German-aligned Jesuits are kind of cool. They're just kind of cool, okay? The German-aligned Jesuits are kind of cool. The French Dominicans are kind of cool. Spanish Dominicans are kind of cooler, but the German Jesuits, they're just awesome. So, and I know Shaban's not a Jesuit, okay, but he definitely was extremely influenced by Jesuits. That's like all the German Jesuits make the most people seethe. They make everyone seethe. Because Kloiken, I think Kloiken was a German Jesuit too. They hate Kloiken. People who know Franzlin in modern theology usually don't like him. Shaban, he's usually given a pass. But that's because most of them don't actually read his handbook. They read kind of his more devotional works, kind of like Lagrange. They'll read his devotional works and be like, "Oh, these are so beautiful and awesome." They're never actually like read or his spiritual works. They're never actually reading like De Revelatione or his Summa commentaries. But the German Jesuits are just really cool, and Shaban's just like super super cool. So that's my tier ranking. Then Franzlin, okay. Franzlin, okay. There's two types of eclectics. I'll put it like this. And I'll explain myself why I put Shaban ahead of Franzlin. This is just kind of I know everybody's going to mention, if you know it, everyone's going to mention the grace controversy thing, but let's just ignore that, okay? When it comes to these two types of eclectics, one type of eclectic kind of reads the entire tradition, and both of them read the entire tradition, of course. They read the entire tradition, but then they're kind of like choosing within the tradition, trying to do a synthesis within the tradition. And then there's another type of eclectic who is reading the whole tradition, and then they're trying to like push it forward by giving, unique solutions. It's totally fine to give unique solutions to old problems. Like, that's cool. As long as there's not a common sentence to where the conclusion is regarded as certain, like you can, if there's only a common opinion or there's a differing of opinion amongst different authors, like you are totally at liberty to do that. But Shaban seems to be, at least for me, for my reading of both of them, Shaban seems to be the first type of eclectic, Franzlin the second type of eclectic, and I just prefer the first type of eclectic. Like, that's just my disposition. There's nothing wrong with being the second type of guy, but my disposition is just that the first one meshes better. So, sorry, guys. Does the argument follow that infallibility is absolutely necessary for the church's doctrine? Because without it, there is no room for error, and thus we could only have opinion and not faith. Not necessarily. I think this would actually be extremely problematic because this would remove, unless, okay, I'll put it like this. There was a specific charism which was given, there's a specific charism which was given by Christ to the apostles and their successors. There's a specific charism and gift of infallibility to where they far exceeded both the old priesthood, the priesthood of the old covenant, the magisterium of the old covenant, and also what was passed down through the patriarchal and paradisial revelation. Because remember, the response to revelation is faith. Okay, the response to revelation is faith. The charism of infallibility is not present in every single dispensation of the passing down of revelation. Because remember, there's not only revelation in Israel, there's not only revelation in the church, there's also revelation going all the way back to paradise. There's revelation in the patriarchs. There's revelation remnants, which were somehow included in different areas of mankind after the flood. And it would be, I think, extremely problematic to argue in every single one of these cases that they heard from a divine legate with the gift of infallibility. Right. So just kind of from this perspective, wouldn't seem to work from the history of God's dealing with mankind. But I would especially say because in Catholicism, we have authentic agents who are able to, elicit the assent of faith to us without the gift of infallibility. For example, your bishop. Your bishop is able to do that, but your bishop does not have personal infallibility. So I would just disagree. Yeah, I would just disagree. I mean, I'm open to hearing otherwise. Like if somebody has a different perspective and they're able to convince me of another opinion and I'm missing something. But I've thought about this a lot, and that's kind of the conclusion that I came to. St. Bonaventure also holds the same implicitly in Roman 7 total Western doctor victory over the Greeks, question mark. We love St. John Chrysostom, though. I would be interested to see what I've never really looked into what the various different opinions are on Roman 7, like throughout the history of the church, kind of beyond like what everybody kind of knows about the different opinions through St. Augustine. And then, there's St. John's opinion, St. Thomas, he lists them. Like beyond that sort of surface level, I don't really know much about, the development in the East of different readings of Roman 7 or anything like that, or the development even in the West. What effects of baptism remain in the believer after mortal sin? Oh, this is a really good question. So for those who don't know, I actually wrote an article on this, something similar to this. So if you go on my Substack, there is a related article on this. But the effects of baptism remain in the believer after mortal sin. Okay, so there is obviously there's 3 effects to baptism. The first effect, actually, there's kind of more to that, but they'll generally fall into these 3 categories. So there is the mark, the baptismal character. So the baptismal character, it gives some sort of participation in the priesthood of Christ. So the baptismal mark or the baptismal character remains after mortal sin. So the baptismal character is not effaced. 2, there would be membership in the church. So one is made a member of the church. So membership in the church is not lost by mortal sin or even by private or occult heresy, schism, etc., but only by either excommunication, public heresy, or public schism. Right? These are the only 3 things that would separate one from being a member of the church. But even after membership, they would still remain a subject to the church. That would remain after sin. And the third thing would be the effects of grace. The effects of grace, the forgiveness of sins, right? The forgiveness of the entire temporal debt. These are things which, are effects of the baptism fruitfully received. So when it comes to these effects, obviously sanctifying grace is lost by mortal sin. Obviously, one incurs, punishment after mortal sin. So really, it's mostly going to be the first 2, although in the third, in a qualified sense, we could talk about continuing fruits insofar as sanctifying grace has a wide range of effects. And just because it has been formally removed doesn't mean that all of these, different effects are, removed as well. Like to give an example, let's say one motivated by sufficient grace were to go and start becoming a frequent prayer. They pray every single day, at 7 a.m., let's say, and that's an effect of sanctifying grace in their soul. Now, if they lose sanctifying grace, it doesn't mean that they'll all of a sudden just lose the habit of praying at 7 a.m. every day, right? Or the same could go for any number of, like sins against chastity, for example. Somebody habituates the fact that they don't fornicate, that, and this is from sanctifying grace. Like just because they've fallen into mortal sin doesn't mean they'll just start wanting to fornicate instantly. So yeah, there are, and I think this is something that a lot of people have had a hard time articulating. And that's kind of part of the reason why I wanted to write that article. A lot of people have a hard time articulating the fact that there can be effects to grace, which are in the soul, to where when one falls into mortal sin, there's sort of these latent habits which are still present within the soul, which keeps, somebody in a sort of, like civil virtue. Obviously not meritorious condignly for eternal life, but there's still these sort of latent habits which make reconversion actually easier for the individual, which is why, when you have people who leave the church, they're actually much more likely to return to the church than somebody who, just never was in the church to begin with. Okay, so when are doubts against the faith sinful versus a temptation? When they are entertained. So if you accept and entertain these doubts rather than them just being passing, then they are sinful. Okay, Lagrange's Summa commentaries are what converted me to Catholicism. Awesome. We love Garrigou Lagrange. Eating venison backstraps right now. Awesome. W. David. We love David. Okay, this is a good question. I'm gonna write. Okay, so I promise that I want to write notes on this. Let me see. I'm going to write it down. Do an article on the CCC, temporal punishment, vengeance, etc. question. Okay, Because somebody asked me this before, and I wrote them a response, right? And it gets a little bit complicated with like a specific like exegesis of the Latin text of the Catechism, in order to comprehend what is being said right there. So what I want to do is I want to actually like write an article explaining it. I'll make it, obviously Junior, you super chatted me, so I'll just make it like a free article. But yeah, I will promise I will write an article for that sometime in like the next week or so from the notes that I already have. I don't want to answer it off the cuff. Okay. I want to get through some of the